Metasploit. It's one of the most powerful tools in a hacker's toolkit. And more than that, it's a full framework built to support every stage of a penetration test, from gathering intel to scanning for vulnerabilities to exploiting those weaknesses, even setting up some tunnels and digging into post-exploitation. It's all there. This video kicks off a series focused specifically on using Metasploit across different machines from hackthebox, TryHackMe, and OffSec. And as I discover more machines that highlight interesting use cases for Metasploit, I'm going to be adding them into this playlist series going forward. But before we dive in, I do want to clarify that this series isn't a full walkthrough of each lab. Instead, we'll be taking a focused approach that zeroes in on how and when Metasploit comes into play. And I'm going to be providing you a bit of context so that you understand what led up to using it. But we'll be staying locked in on the framework itself. By the end of the series, my goal is to help you feel confident using Metasploit in your own penetration testing workflow. Now, with that being said, while we'll cover several scenarios using the framework, I do strongly encourage you to try completing the labs without it as well. If you're preparing for a certification, keep in mind that OffSec only allows Metasploit once during the OSCP exam and only against a single target. So it's important to get practice both with and without it. And also just double check their rules on the usage of Metasploit specifically. If you're new here, I'm Alupului or Neil Spring, a cyber enthusiast who loves CDF challenges, research and vulnerabilities, and all things hacking. So without further ado, let's dive right in. I do want to highlight two great resources that I found that were really useful for me, especially during my journey on being an ethical hacker and a penetration tester. Is first being TryHackMe. They have 3 rooms on Metasploit that kind of walks you through Metasploit, how to use it, so forth and so on, and they give you some challenges. So here it is on TryHackMe. You can simply go into the Learn and search Metasploit, and they have 3 rooms here on it. And the first being the introduction that kind of goes over Metasploit Pro, the framework, the modules, the tools, so forth and so on. And you can kind of see here, once you join into the rooms, you can go through these tasks and they can kind of highlight all the different tasks that they have, provide you a little bit more information. This is a great resource. You can go in and do that and answer in the questions, complete that room, so forth and so on. So they have 3 rooms. That was a great resource that I went through when I first started. The other one is through hackthebox. Using the Metasploit framework. That is at the academy.hackthebox.com. I also went through this module as well. This is a really great one. It is a tier 0, easy for offensive. You simply go into the all modules and you can find it here on offensive. And here we go. When we go in, we can kind of see using the Metasploit framework. And this again is very similar to the TryHackMe. They kind of go through the preface, the introduction of Metasploit, how Metasploit project is divided into 2, Metasploit Pro, Metasploit Framework. The framework, the free version, is the one that we're going to be dealing with. Not really the Metasploit Pro, because that is commercial use. That is a paid subscription. We're not going to be messing with that until maybe later on. So what we're dealing with right now is the Metasploit framework. So again, these are really 2 great resources, the TryHackMe ones and the hackthebox. I found both of them really great to kind of go through all of these modules and to figure out, okay, what is Metasploit, especially for those who have never heard of Metasploit or maybe have heard about it, but never have really actually used it before and wanted to know a little bit more about it, but have not done it with a hackthebox machine or any other machine. This is a great resource to kind of go through, and you can kind of see here in the introduction, it's showing you like, oh, here are the modules for it, right? Or here are the plugins and how to see them. So we can go in and go into the terminal and LS and show it, and it will show us all the Metasploit framework plugins. So again, a lot of information in these 2. I highly recommend both of those. But what we're going to be doing is we're going to be going through kind of after this. So I do recommend going through either one of these, the TryHackMe one or the hackthebox one, before actually trying to do the machines, so that you can kind of get it. But you don't have to. You can completely just watch these videos and pick up on it, because a lot of it is going to be pretty repetitive, and you're going to notice that going through these videos. All right. So with that being said, let's go ahead and jump into our first machine. So I've already launched that machine. It is called Lame. This is from the original founder chap. It is a very old machine, so let's go through it. Here is the IP address. Let's go ahead and work through that now. All right, we did some quick recon, and here we go. We have a bunch of information now that we can start applying this to Metasploit. So let's go ahead and start from the top. Here we go. We have FTP 21 open, and we're getting a version for VSFTPD 2.3.4. So that is very interesting. I'm going to go ahead and copy that, go into a new window, and let's go ahead and launch Metasploit. So MSF console is going to go ahead and launch that. And here we go. Now I'm going to clear the screen so I keep it nice and clean. And we're going to search for VSFTPD. And we're essentially asking Metasploit now for information on this. So here we go. Metasploit comes back with us, and it's telling us that yes, we have 2 modules in the Metasploit framework that are available for us. And one is a denial of service that we're probably not going to try doing. But the other is a backdoor. So, and it's ranked excellent. It is from 2011. Again, this is an old machine, but what we're highlighting here is we're highlighting the ability that Metasploit has these modules. So let's go ahead and see, now that we search for that module, right? We search from FTP, we saw the version 2.34, and here we go, VSFT 234. We're kind of making that assumption, but here we go in the description. We're also getting that version. Backdoor command execution. So we want to use this. So we could do this a number of ways. We could do it by use 1, or we can go ahead and use the based on the exploit name. So we can go ahead and do it like this. And now we have that. So now it says here, no payload configured, defaulting to this, so on and so on. So what do we do next? We have to see what are our options available for us. But before that, let's go ahead and look at this. Interact with the module by name or index. For example, info 1, use 1, or use that. So we already did this part, but let's say we wanted a little bit more information on 1. So we could have done info 1, and then now that gives us this information on the module for this. So it gives us the name, the platform. It gives us a bunch of different information, some available targets. In this case, we only have an automatic, but it can list a number of different things. It gives us some basic options. But what I like doing when I do an info is I like looking at the description. So this module exploit, a malicious backdoor that was added to the VSFTP download archive. This backdoor was introduced in this, so forth and so on, based on these dates. And then they also give us some references that we can go ahead and look into for more information. So I love using the info for that to kind of figure out, because maybe we have not just 2 options available, maybe we're just getting a bunch of them. So a great little thing with Metasploit. So, okay, now we have used the info and we're running it. So we have here the exploit is running, right? And now we want to figure out what are our options from that info, right? So we're going to write options. And here we go. It shows us the module options. Here's what we used, right? And now we're getting a bunch of different things here. We're getting our host and our port, and as well as the exploit target. And we know based on our info that the target, we only have automatic. So we don't have to worry about that. What we do have to worry about is we have to worry about figuring out what information we put in to the options, because that is what Metasploit is all about. So to do that, we're going to do set our hosts. And now we want to set the IP address for the machine that we want to exploit. The way I think about it is our hosts, I think, are for remote. So whenever I see R for remote, I know it's the machine that I'm attacking. If I see L, I'm thinking local. So we're going to see a lot of L host and R host going forward. So again, remembering R host for remote, L for local. So that's how I remember it going forward. So let's go ahead and go back into here, get the IP address, set it. We're now setting the R host to the IP address, and we could also just do it this way as well. Doesn't matter. Now for the R port, we are seeing 21 here. So let's go ahead and go back to our scan, and we know, yes, this service is run on 21. So we don't have to change the R port, the remote port for that. So now that we have that, I can go ahead and clear the screen to keep it nice and clean. And I'm doing that with Control L, that's bound. But I also can do an options to see, have my input been reflected? Has it been updated or not? In this case, yes, I'm seeing the IP address being updated for this module. So now we can go ahead and do a run or exploit. Either one works. And now Metasploit is going to do its thing. It's going to use this module here, and it's going to try giving us a remote code as execution. In this case, I believe last time I ran this was not a successful attempt. So there is something wrong with this attack. Yes, the exploit has been completed, but no session was created. And for us to view sessions, we could do sessions like this, and we're not seeing any active sessions. So in my mind, I'm thinking maybe there was something wrong with this FTP. Regardless, it didn't work for us, but I think it's still important to kind of highlight this train of thought so that you can kind of know how to go about it. All right, let's go back into our Nmap scan. So we tried the first one, right? And we're seeing here no session timeout, connection, so forth and so on, yada, yada. Let's go ahead and look at the next one. The next one we could try open SSH, and we could look to see if there's any vulnerabilities for 4.7p1. I'm not sure if there is, but the other thing we can look at is Samba. So Samba version 3x to 4x, or here is another Samba for 445 3.0.2. We could do that. So let's go ahead and go back into Metasploit and search for that. So search for Samba 3.0.20, and let's take a look. So it comes back with a user map script from 207, Samba user name map script. It doesn't give us any information on the version. We can do an info 0 again. And here we go. What we're looking for here is in the description, which is what I love to see. This module exploit a command execution vulnerability in Samba version 3.0.20 through this version, right? By specifying a username containing shell metadata characters, attackers can execute arbitrary commands. Another important information is no authentication is needed to exploit this vulnerability, since this option is used to map usernames prior to authentication. So that is awesome. And it gives us, again, the basic options, some payload information, some available targets provided by JDuck at Metasploit, as well as some other information. So let's go ahead and use 0 to use that. And if we did that one more time, we can kind of see here using configured payload CMD reverse netcat. All right, for the multi-Samba user map script. Now we can go ahead and do the options. And again, remember, right for remote, left for local. So right is going to be the target that we're putting, the IP address that we're wanting to attack. In this case, the 10.10.14.23.1. So we're going to set our host to that lame machine. And for the R port 139, I think that was correct. Yes. Let's go ahead and try 139. If that doesn't work, we'll try 445. And then the L port. So L port here, we'll set L host and we'll set it to ton 0. And ton 0 is what I'm running the OpenVPN for the hackthebox. So that is the IP address at the very top here. You could also set L host to just simply that IP address that you're running under. But I usually like doing the L host ton 0 because that's my IP address sometimes changes pretty often. So that is set. For the L port, we can leave it at 4444. That's not an issue. You can change that if you wanted to. Exploit target automatic. Sure, we'll leave that as well. The other thing we can do is we can also change the payload option, but in this case, we're going to leave that alone because reverse netcat is completely fine. But in the future video, you'll kind of see our payload options being something that we change and a very easy thing to overlook sometimes. All right, so let's go ahead, clear, do another options, make sure everything is right. R host is good. L host is good. Now I'm seeing some issue. Set R host. I accidentally set the R host incorrectly. Here is the IP address for the machine. There is the IP address for the machine because I noticed both of those are duplicates. All right, so there we go. So that is the lane machine that we're targeting. That is our local machine that we're running the reverse netcat on. Now that we have that, let's go ahead and run that exploit. Again, we can use run or we could use exploit. Either one is fine. Now it's going to do its thing. It started the reverse TCP handler on our IP address for the port that we're running under, right? The L port here. And here we go. Command session 1 opened and it opened up here at this time date. So that is awesome. So I can do ID and there we go. We are a root. So now we have that reverse shell. Who am I? I am root. So from here, we can go ahead and upgrade our TTY and do a number of things. But that is it for this machine for Metasploit. So let's go ahead and move on to the next one. All right, the next one is called Blue. So we launched the machine, we copied the IP address, and then we did a quick recon and then a script vulnerability scan. And here we go for the port 445 on this scan. We're getting a bunch of information for the vulnerability script. So here we go. It is showing us SMB vulnerability for the MS17010. Vulnerable remote code execution vulnerability in Microsoft SMB version 1 servers, the famous MS17, the eternal blue. So here is the CVE, a risk factor, a critical remote code execution vulnerability, so forth and so on, and a bunch of different information. So let's go ahead and go into Metasploit now. And I'm going to do MS console. And instead of just MS console by itself, I'm going to add in the Q flag here because I don't want the ASCII art to pop up. This is a quick flag to just kind of go right into it without the ASCII art or the version number or so forth and so on. So now let's go ahead and clear the screen and then do a search for this. So we want to search for the eternal blue. So we can go ahead and simply search for MS17, and this will pop us a lot of modules for the eternal blue. Now, the other option is just simply doing the eternal blue search, but I think the version MS17 is probably the best route to go. So here we go. We have a bunch of information. And again, it shows us here at the bottom that we can do info, we could do use, we could do all this information. So let's go ahead and figure out which one do we need to run out of these. So I think we can probably start with the very first one. That's probably the best likelihood, option 0, for exploiting the Windows SMB via Eternal Blue. So I'm going to simply go info 0. It can give us a bunch of different references, some information on it, some basic options. Here, like I mentioned before, the available targets, as you can see here, we have a number of different targets. It could be a Windows 7, could be a Windows 8. I think we're going to go ahead and just use a 0 and let's see what we can do. So we're going to use 0. I'm going to clear the screen and it's going to configure the payload for a Windows, the 64 architecture for the interpreter reverse TCP. So we can go ahead and do options, and we can see here the module options is for the Eternal Blue. And now we got our options that we can go ahead and fill out the required sections. In this case, our host is required, our port is required. Some of this other information isn't required. You're going to see that, but some of it is required. So let's go ahead and set our hosts. And let's go back to our Nmap scan, copy the IP address for this lab for the blue, set our host to that IP address. The ARP port is correct. Don't need any of that information because it is showing us as optional. And then now we can go back in here. We're seeing here a 64-bit architecture. We can maybe change that, but let's go ahead and run it as a default. If it doesn't work, we can go ahead and do show payload or show options and see what are available for us. But we do need to set the L host. So let us set L host to our OpenVPN IP address. In this case, again, top right. And we can go ahead and set the L port. I'm going to put 1234. You could leave it at 4444. I can, you could do whatever. Automatic for target. I think that's fine. Let's go ahead, clear the screen, do another options. Just double check to see if everything is working correctly. If we input everything, yes, we did that correctly. All right. And now we can go ahead and run exploit. And let's see if that is successful or not. It's going to do its thing. Here we go. It started the reverse TCP handler. And now it's doing its exploit. And there we go. Interpreter session opened. Here is the IP addresses. And here is our nice little win. So we can go ahead and get UID. And there is our server name. We are system. So we can go ahead and now go into a shell if we wanted to and start going through it this way. We could also exit this and go back into interpreter, and we can even background. Let's say you accidentally got out of the shell or you background it. You can have a session in the background. So how do we see if our sessions are available? Simply typing sessions will show us our sessions. So you can have a number of different sessions, and you can also start tunneling through different sessions as well. So again, if we want to get back into our sessions, I believe it was sessions 1, and that throws us back into our session. Background gets us back out of it if we want to run another payload with this payload that we're running right now. But in this case, let's go ahead and go back into the session. From here, we can go ahead and do a question mark or even a help, and that will give us our interpreter options. So this is a nice thing about Meterpreter. We can kind of see all these different options that Meterpreter has available for us. So it has a number of different things. Ones I like doing is hash dump. That dumps the contents of the SAM database. Let's see if we could do that. And that will give us some NTLM hashes. Here we go. So we got administrator. So we can log in now as administrator with this hash. So that is awesome that Meterpreter can do that. Now, Meterpreter can do a number of other things. It has webcam options, user interface commands, get desktop. That is interesting. So let's go ahead and maybe screen share. Let's see what it might be in the default. Okay, so it is in the default screen. So that is cool. So that is how you could do that. Let's go ahead and close that because we don't need to do a screen share. So you can go through and see a number of different commands that you could do with Meterpreter. The other thing I like doing is maybe you want to migrate into another process. That is an option. What I like doing is GUID or just kind of running commands that gives us a little bit more information. But the other thing we could do is, again, going into our shell and then doing a who am I, and you can kind of see. So from here, we can go ahead and CD into the users and start getting the flags that way. We could also exit out of it and get back into Meterpreter. All right, next up is Optimum. I've already launched it. Here is the IP address. Again, another machine made by Chap. Let's go ahead and take a look at the Nmap scan. There's only one service running right now, and that's 80 for TCP and HTTP service. But here we go. The most important part is the version, HTTP file server. So that is what we're going to take a look at. It looks like the service info is on a Windows, so it is some file server on Windows. So we're going to go ahead and go into Metasploit. I already have it running, but I'm simply going to search HTTP file server and take a look at what is showing up. Now, the other option is where people love to use a searchploit, if I can spell it right, searchploit like this, and that is also going to show us some type of different vulnerabilities. In this case, here we go, using searchploit, and this is not part of Metasploit. This is just something that I like pairing with Metasploit, because maybe sometimes in Metasploit, when you search something, you're not able to find exactly what you're looking for. In this case, I sometimes default to searchploit. So searchploit and Metasploit, I like to use hand in hand. So I like to kind of show this in these video series as well. In fact, by doing searchploit, we can kind of see, okay, here is the path, the vulnerability, and we can go ahead and download this and look at the Python script, but I don't want to get ahead of myself. So I just kind of wanted to mention that. And in this case, Metasploit does have something showing up for HTTP file server. So here we go. We're going to go ahead and use 0. And then we're going to do clear screen, using options. We're going to set the R hosts for this machine, right? Here is the R hosts. Let me set that correctly. There we go. Set R port 80 is fine. Server host 000, that is fine as well. Server port, I'm going to set the server port to 8081 instead of 8080 because I don't know if it's going to conflict with my burp suite, because my burp suite and Foxy proxy are on 8080 as well. But I did want to mention that if you are setting it to 8080, you can actually use Meterpreter or Metasploit through burp suite, and you can start proxying through it and taking a look at all the things that it's doing. But I don't want to get ahead of myself again. I digress. So we have set to that. Let's go ahead and do another options and see, okay, yes, we have set the R hosts, we have set the R port and get R for remote and L for local. So here we go, server host 000, that's fine. That's our local machine. And you can kind of see here the description of it. We did change the server port to 8081. And here we're seeing payload options. Okay, Windows interpreter reverse TCP, that looks fine. But we want to set our L host to 10.0 because that is our IP address that we're running for the hackthebox OpenVPN. And then we can also just leave the L port alone at 4444. That's fine. Our target automatic, that is also fine as well. So let's go ahead and run this exploit and let's see if this is going to do its job or not. And it looks like interpreter session did in fact open. So there we go. So it finished, started the handler serving IP. It looks like this is the payload that it was serving under. And then it sent a malicious and then it requested that payload and it then generated our interpreter session. So that is awesome. Get UID, and we can see here we are Kotas, if I said that right, I don't know. All right, from here, let's go ahead and figure out how to privilege escalate into administrator. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clear the screen. And from here, let's get back the system. So we are Kotas, but we need to figure out how to get into the administrator account, right? And if we did hash dump, we don't have the privileges to get the hash for administrator. So we need to figure out how do we privilege escalate into the administrator. So we can go ahead and background this session now. And that's going to take us out of the interpreter session. And if we want to take a look at our sessions, we simply type sessions in again, and we can see here we have the one session. So we can go sessions 1 to get back into it. But we want to now use something else from Metasploit. And what we want to look for is we want to look for the local exploit suggester. So here is a very simple tool. It's a multi-recon local exploit suggester. So I'm going to go ahead and use 0, and that's going to put us in that module. Clear the screen, go into options, and now we have 2 required fields. In this case, we're not seeing our host, we're seeing session. So we remember when we did the sessions, we want to set the session here to the session that we have available for us. So we simply type in set session to 1, and we can go ahead and run that. And now it's going to use that interpreter session that we have through Metasploit, and it's going to try to suggest us what available exploits are on this machine so that we can actually privilege escalate into administrator. All right, so here we go. So it finished and it gave us what is that, 49? It gives us a bunch of things. Okay, this target is not exploitable. It's all red, right? But we are seeing some interesting things here. So it did its thing. And it came back with some valid modules for session 1 that appears to be vulnerable. So we have here some bypasses, some CVEs, so forth and so on. So we need to see what one we could use to actually try it. So let's go and try number 9, because I am seeing MS16 secondary login. But cannot be validated. Let's go ahead. I don't know. Let's try number 9. We could try all these. I'm assuming probably all of them work, but let's go ahead and try 9 and see. So we want to use, let's go ahead and do it like this. All right. So now we're using that exploit. And let's go ahead and do an options. Let's clear the screen, do an options like this. Again, it is requiring us for our session. So we will set session to 1. And remember our L host. Let's go ahead and set L host to ton 0, L host being local. L port 44444 is fine. We can go ahead and even change that to 1234 if we wanted to. And the exploit target Windows 86. I think we do want to set target to maybe 1. Let's take a look at what 1 is. 1 is for 64 bits, so that is correct. Okay. And looks like everything looks good. So let's go ahead and run and see if that does anything. And it looks like it is not compatible. Let's go ahead and set target back to 84 and try that. It looks like that worked out for us. And there we go. So it looks like that was it. The 84-bit, the 84 architecture 32-bit was the correct one to go with. I'm assuming it's because probably our interpreter architecture is 84. So that's probably why. But let's take a look, get UID, and there we go. We are a system. So now we can actually go into the shell if we wanted to. We can go ahead and see if we can hash dump. Yes, we can. We can get the administrator hash. And that's it for the first part of this Metasploit series. We went through 3 quick machines, really enjoyed them. I think all of them made by Chap. There was Lame, Blue, and Optimum, all using Interpreter. So if you have any questions, feel free to throw them in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, you want to see more of this, smash that like button, subscribe, all that shenanigans. And I'll see you guys in the next video for the next machines.